Okay, I've put an introductory video there, sorry, picture, just to make it look a bit more presentable. And we've already said we're going to go through learning outcome 4, which is the main techniques for supply development in supply chain. So the headings cover methods of improving supply chains through developing suppliers. So use of cross-functional working, most case studies have examples of that, so that's always a possibility. Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
cross-functional working, is it the same as cross-functional team?
Yes. Yes, it's really just another word for working with teams. Yeah, that's a fair point, is that. I know when we get to my slides, I think I've called it team working rather than cross-functional involvement. It's the teamwork and working with colleagues and matrix structures, etc. Simultaneous engineering is rather an old-fashioned engineering term about doing things at the same time. And then we move on to innovation, technology and relationships. I think too difficult. I think the hard thing is to make sure you link to theory when you're describing what's going on in the study. Yep.
Also, with this simultaneous engineering, you can't do a lean supply. Because you need to have all the stock available, because with lean supply, just in time.
Yeah.
You can't do just in time because you need to have everything available before you start.
That's right.
When you progress this.
Yeah, I think this is more for, to be honest, on designing new products, rather than processes for delivering and assembling items. So I think this is pre-manufacture. So this is to get products to market quicker, I think, rather than making the products. Because obviously with such an Airbus, people are making the wings at the same time as the body. But I think simultaneous engineering in this sense should be possibly called simultaneous design, because it is about designing and developing at the same time. It's not about making. Probably engineering, but it's not a good word, is it? It conjures up the wrong sort of impression, I think. You okay with that? Yeah, sort of. Right, okay.
What are the examples of the company that does that? Develop technology and share it with their supplier?
Well, a lot of the car industry has, such as your Volvos and your Fords and that, when they've had to set up in lesser developed countries. And I think people in the drugs industry...
They make the design on how it's going to be, yes?
Yeah, they design it and often build the prototype, and then they will transfer that technology into the supply base and let the suppliers use that technology to manufacture. So the drugs industry is quite common as well, where they'll license the technology to make drugs and that. So that's common. Possibly... yeah, I think I would stick to the car industry. Apple might work as well, so it tends to be electronics industry and automotive industry. Obviously it tends to be technology by definition, but there isn't very good examples, to be honest, in the study guides. I think the McLaren and Sheffield universities are a useful example, but it is from a university to a company rather than company to company. So you would use it when you're trying to develop your supplies. If you've got technology, and technology could be a process, it could be quality or lean techniques, which could be classed as technology, or quality improvement, Six Sigma. You might actually help develop your supplies by sharing that with them. So it's a big area. So there are benefits of collaborating, usual stuff. Shared objectives, openness, reduced cost, reduced stock holding, the usual benefits of working with suppliers. We might do ESI, which is collaboration with suppliers, and obviously there are benefits and disadvantages of that, but it should speed up product development, but it'll tie you possibly to the supplier with the possible loss of confidentiality and perhaps incentive for them to improve. So ESI you've done many times. That's the standard SIP slide, and that's one that I've added, which is very similar and perhaps easier to learn. Just be wary that it's, and there's a definition there, and of course you'll have these in your exam, but I think that's reasonably okay. In the textbook on it, but it is a named bullet point, Innovation Council. It's not one, if you haven't been in the car industry, maybe you'll have come across. So it's a form of sharing, benchmarking. It's a very high important supply development itself, which again you've done at level 4. So development is about improving performance of suppliers. It can be results orientated. You know, we've got quality issues, you aren't performing well enough, you need to improve. Or it could be more process orientated to enhance suppliers' capabilities both now and for the future. So some books classify it as directive, where suppliers are regulated and given targets, and some is more facilitative, where suppliers engage collaboratively in teamwork and planning. So it can be strategic or it can be quite operational, depending if you're using, if you're trying to work at a strategic level, you're trying to improve the future capabilities of the supplier. Whereas
the question I want to ask about this supplier development is, an organization can develop a supplier, you get, and then they use the knowledge that they've learned or they've gotten from a first organization to go and work, maybe apply it with another organization who is the rival of the first.
That is one of the big problems, and of course a lot will depend on non-disclosure agreements and licensing arrangements.
With the non-disclosure agreement, it's not possible for a person to unlearn whatever he or she has learned.
Well, that's right. No, I agree with you. It is one of the problems, but possibly they'll insist on them being only supplying them. But the benefit to the supplier is they do gain knowledge which they can gain elsewhere. There's an example at the moment of Boeing going to work with a Turkish fighter company to develop some aircraft, and the American Lockheed company they work with said, well, you can't use the technology you've developed with us because it was developed between us. But how can the designers, you quite rightly say, unlearn what they've learned? It's not possible. So there can be problems, but we happen to be too cynical. But you're quite right. It isn't easy. So there are, but the big companies do need to develop suppliers, and they do need to work with them. So we need the definition, we need the terminology. It might be run as a project where there's an executive sponsor who sort of coordinates, makes sure things happen and drives stuff through the company. That's really a project management slide, but it's included in the test. It's a straightforward and there are obviously benefits for the buyer. Supports, improved products, streamlined processes, getting better prices maybe, but there are costs, time, money, resources, maybe risk of sharing information, as you said, and intellectual property.
The designed one.
I think so. It is. It's to improve the quality and speed up the processes. But it could be long term to improve their capability. Now, to improve their capability, you may have to transfer technology, know-how to them, how to do something. So it's the transfer of knowledge, products or processes to achieve higher sales, lower costs. And it's the process that allows the passage of a technology from the donor to another company, the receiver. So I like that definition because it shows something moves from one company to another. Although it may not be theirs to keep, it may be licensed or used by agreement. So technology transfer sounds difficult, or that, but you don't need them both. Okay then, 4.3 I won't spend much time on because it is just how can we use computers basically, in simple terms, to improve performance. So we can share information, we can link our e-procurement systems, we can use the P2P, which is very similar to the supermarket checkouts, but it's automating payment with technology. So it reduces costs, it's quite a low level improvement. We can use e-sourcing to improve our sourcing. We can use cloud computing, and it talks here very strangely about XML and programming interfaces. So sometimes for our computer systems to talk to each other, we need integration tools so that the different legacy systems can talk to each other. And often cloud computing makes this much easier, where you can use shared services in the cloud. They've never asked anything very technical here. It has just been more, how can Tesco use information technology to improve the supply chain? And the answer is e-procurement.
I really don't understand XML.
Yeah, extensible markup language. Yeah, it is a language which facilitates sharing of information between different companies. There is a little bit in my notes on that. I can flick those up if you want. But I think instead of EDI, which uses a different language, electronic data interchange, you can also use XML, which is a standard language, which means if both companies use XML, they can share information and work together. So it allows companies to work together and share information, and that's about all you'd need. Is that okay, do you think? We can come back to that on the revision slide. So technologies we could use, and there are drawbacks with technology, cost, reliability, etc.
Now, the benefit of technology is the same as the benefit of e-sourcing.
Yeah, well, e-sourcing is one of the benefits, but there's other technologies you can use that also give you benefits. So e-sourcing gives you many benefits. Using e-auctions gives you benefits. You might get better prices. Using RFID, you get benefits because you'll have better control of your stock. Using email, using intranets, using extranets. So technology is everything that uses technology, not just e-sourcing, e-procurement. ERP systems use technology to help plan and schedule. So yeah, MRP systems. So can you say technology systems are everything that uses technology? Telephones, internet, email, intranet, extranet, barcoding, kitchen sink. It's a huge area. So all those are general benefits. Video conferencing's there at the bottom. So you can talk to your suppliers and see them face to face. You can use emails. So lots of benefits. It opens up markets, it speeds up processes, it changes the way supply chains are organised. So there's a wide ranging impact there. It can help reduce fraud. Again, I'd never remember all those. I would have to sort of have a flick at them if I got an exam, but they're fairly straightforward. Development of procurement systems, there ought to be a little chart here that shows that it can move from independence through to full integration, where procurement has a key role in systematic cooperation, information sharing. So procurement can be fully integrated, or it can be almost operating independently with its own systems and quite uncoordinated. So that's a sort of overview of procurement systems, and this from your level floor shows a very confusing slide which shows e-sourcing on the right, e-procurement on the left, and e-purchasing above. Really it should be called e-procurement, and that sourcing's here and purchasing's here. But it is showing you basically all the areas where technology could be used when you are doing procurement, through from specifications, tenders, etc. Do you remember the slide from the level 4, that one, you Bo? That one's certainly in. I think that is business needs.
Yeah.
Stock control systems use technology. So you can have demand management systems, forecasting systems. It helps control stock, make sure we don't run out. They're cost effective. You can book stuff in on the computer, and having a good stock control system makes sure stock doesn't get lost or damaged or deteriorate. Requirement planning, so you've done your MRP, ARP before, so they're very important systems. There's CAD/CAM, very important in engineering for designing. E-sourcing, catalogues, portals, auctions, tendering. It's very broad, this one. E-auctions, advantages and disadvantages. Again, I think one you'll be fairly familiar with. E-tendering and benefits of e-sourcing, which you touched on earlier. There's many advantages. Using P2P, speeding up payments, more efficiency, better budget control. So using P2P can give many benefits. And then we might collaborate with technology using conferencing, Skype, etc. We could use cloud computing. We could use supply chain software. There are many parts of SAP, such as end-to-end logistics, quality management tools, etc. And then there's the odd slide about data integrity, risk to data security, and one from level 4, information assurance. Now, I've gone quickly through that because the book has got loads on that, and yet the questions have been very, very generic. Just how could they use technology? What would the benefits be of them? Suggest how Tesco are using computers. Suggest how technology could be used. So I think you don't.
When a question like that is asked,
yeah,
that means mention things like inventory,
yeah,
sourcing,
yeah,
P2P,
yes,
all those things.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Expatiate on them.
Yeah, so they would be the answer they'd expect. They wouldn't want too detailed, so you'd pick out some things that link to the case, such as what you've said, and you'd be fine. So the last little bit I'll try and get through this is balance scorecards, which you have covered before but we'll go over. Joint performance appraisal, which is quite a enlightened view of doing it together. And the relationship assessment, which is on the contracting and relationship management unit. So joint performance systems recognise the impact of buy-side processes, identify problems in the buy-side relationship that could impact on performance, support value-added relationships. So if you're both jointly measuring and appraising each other, it will encourage collaboration, a bit like 360-degree feedback on your professional development. So joint performance appraisal, very difficult to do in practice, but it sounds good in the textbooks. So there's the benefits to the buyer and there are benefits to the supplier of joint performance appraisal. It should lead to improved performance and it should lead to improved relationships, and if that happens then these benefits will follow. You'll have good knowledge of the buyer, they'll have good knowledge of your thing, so each person will understand where they are and their systems. How do we measure performance? Well, it needs to be fair, efficient. We need prompt, fair payment of invoices. Disputes need handling. So these are all areas we might measure. Ethical conduct. It doesn't quite fit the heading, but that's the SIP slide.
What's the difference between KPI and service level?
Right, yeah, it's a very good question, that. I think the simplest way to think about it is an SLA will contain KPIs maybe on how performance will be measured, but SLAs tend to be on service contracts, whereas KPIs can be in SLAs or they can be standalone for measuring products in a scorecard. But
Okay.
unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion in the books, isn't there? It isn't very clear. That's how I tend to think of it. I think of, well, there will be KPIs in an SLA, and KPIs are
You don't
performance
have
measures.
SLA in KPIs. It's just KPIs in SLAs.
Yes, yeah. Have a look at my. It's possibly not well taught at level 4. It's tucked away in one of the units. So that's worth a look at. The 2 video clips there. One's only 3 minutes, and then the others are 6 minutes. They are very, very good. And in an important area is balance scorecard that's applied to the supply chain. So the one I gave you earlier was generic, but if you're measuring the customer's perspective, you could be looking at the number of orders delivered on time to your internal clients, reduced number of stock outs. So you can measure supply chain things. Finance, there's some examples there. There's some examples of internal processes, and there are some examples there of learning and growth. Purchase employees trained, SIPS qualifications maybe, PDP targets achieved within purchasing department,